I love waking up in mornings when I'm coming from the East Coast and my time zone is advantageous for that. We are in Torrance, California for the Robinson Helicopter Safety Course. We're not going to be able to get our aircraft yet. That is not for until later in the year. I figured since I haven't been flying for almost a year now, we should probably do some recurrent training, doing the Robinson official safety course. So that course you get an hour of flight training, and then it's a bunch of classroom as well. I highly recommend it for anybody who flies Robinson helicopters. It's very in-depth. I also got Becky a spot in the course too, even though she's not a pilot. That's unheard of.
They're letting me do the course.
She's only auditing the course. She's not doing any of the actual flight training.
I am the co-pilot, aka the runner of this YouTube channel, aka the one who is the safety police and also editing this. So I think it's beneficial for me to be there. Thanks, Robinson, for letting me come. I don't fly, obviously, but I'm hoping to pick up a couple of nuggets just to hopefully make our flying a little bit more safe, especially when we're doing our big cross-country trips and our more remote trips. It is so hot here, I'm dying. Also, if any of this footage looks weird, I'm using the A7C2 for the first time, making a video with it, and I haven't tested it out, which is not something I recommend doing. Definitely recommend testing your new camera gear before you bring it on a trip to make video. But what better way to test it than making this vlog?
How much are you looking forward to sitting in a classroom learning about helicopters for 8 hours straight?
I haven't sat in a classroom since 2008.
You haven't sat in a classroom since pre-social media.
Correct.
That's profound. Before your attention span was eroded to that of a baby carrot.
Well, hopefully it's not too boring.
Well, boring is in the eye of the beholder now, isn't it? We're doing a factory tour tomorrow. We're literally gonna walk by our helicopter being rebuilt. They had to tear it all down. They had to basically inventory all the items. They had to assess every single piece to see what needs to be replaced, what's salvageable.
There's a lot of it that needed to be fixed. A lot more than we thought.
This is the second overhaul for this aircraft, and so things that were done to it, like the wire harness had been modified a bunch of times, so they're like, it's just cheaper to, and probably better to replace the entire wire harness, so we did that.
Turn that thing around. You might be wondering why we chose to get the helicopter overhauled and not buy a new one. Maybe we'll talk about that in this video. Uber's here.
We're getting a lot of upgrades to it, but they gave us a timeline now. It's on the assembly line. I think they said 6 to 8 weeks. Is that what they said for the timeline? Then it goes to paint, which is 2 to 3 weeks. Then it gets detailed 2 to 3 weeks, test flight 2 to 3 weeks. And then I also had to get time off work to be able to pick the helicopter up. Morning, yep. We've arrived.
Yeah, we're here
at the helicopter factory.
It's been a while. Last time we were here, we dropped off the Millennial Falcon. A lot of you have been wondering, like, why get your helicopter overhauled instead of buying new? And the first one is cost.
Cost is a huge thing. A brand new one is going to be probably north of $600,000, where a used one is less than that.
There's still value held in the airframe, even if it was timed out.
Because you can buy a used one, and then it's less upfront cost, and then knowing you've got a big expense coming up later, you can kind of use those years to save up, which is what we did. And also we kind of got used to our aircraft, Is
it what you call a logical fallacy? Outside of the airframe, nothing is going to be the same.
Almost become attached to it, right?
Yeah. It doesn't look anything like it looked before.
Like, you fool, this is not even my final form. Forklifts.
I have a really complicated relationship with helicopters, but hearing that fire up just now, just like, I got like a ping of like excitement.
Look at all them helicopters.
Well, yeah, there they all are. We can peep here. This R44 Cadet has a new horizontal stabilizer on the back.
Which you know now.
Which I know about.
Resists
roll. Just finished lunch. We're learning a lot. I know nothing, but I'm managing to follow along. Time to go.
Oh, getting called back.
That was a really interesting and informative day. A, I love safety. B, Bob's hilarious. C, I feel a lot less nervous about some of the things that I was feeling nervous about, like knowing that a Robinson helicopter is not going to break up mid-flight in turbulence, and that all you just have to do is like slow it down because turbulence is really freaky, as we've seen on heading west, and I'm basically crying going through Banning Pass. So that's reassuring.
That is a turbulent area.
That was very turbulent, yeah.
I found Bob very entertaining.
I haven't been in a classroom in years, and I have to say that was probably the most entertaining class I've ever had.
I'm impressed. And of course, you felt vindicated when he specifically talked about having a survival kit.
Yes, I was like, thank you.
And you're like, ooh, a kit.
I was like, please tell me what's in your kit. Oh, there's 2 full days and then there's 2 half days. So today it was all like accident stuff, things that are basically going to kill you.
Wires, invert IMC.
And, smell that. Smells good. And a lot of stats, which I found
smells
really
like new helicopters.
So tomorrow, I don't know, I think we're doing a factory tour tomorrow. Hopefully we'll get a glimpse of the Millennial Falcon on the an assembly line.
I had to preface all this by telling Becky, like, take these presentations with a grain of salt. You will see horrific helicopter crashes and accidents, but it's trying to scare us into being safe.
As he was like delivering it, I was like, this is intense because this is trying to scare a bunch of Chris's.
Day 2 of the Robinson Helicopter Safety Course. I think we're going to talk more about technical stuff today.
You might lose me on this one today.
Ooh, smell that?
Oh, new helicopters. Did we say this last night?
Fresh helicopters. Wow.
Holy shit. What do you think of that?
There's nothing to hold on to. Wow. This is as naked as we're going to see this aircraft ever.
Walking into the Robinson Helicopter factory and seeing our aircraft on the assembly line was very surreal. The first time that I saw the factory was before we owned our aircraft, and it was just like a pipe dream. And now we had our very own helicopter, which we, mind you, had used for like 5 years. And then that helicopter was now going down the official Robinson assembly line. Together, all of these parts can create this like fantastic flying machine. But then seeing it ripped apart, it's like, oh, it's literally just made of a chromoly frame, some aluminum panels, an engine, gearbox, a couple rotors. And it's just like, this is a very rudimentary flying machine, but yet all the pieces together take us on all these crazy adventures. The inside of the helicopter was completely stripped back. There were no seats. They were still installing all the electrical components, all the new wiring and wire harnesses. Interestingly enough though, they repainted all of the black surfaces on the inside. So some of it looked very new, but then you look on the outside and they had like clearly repaired a lot of areas on the actual shell. So it looked like there was stuff ground back to the bare metal. There was rivets that were replaced. The other thing too is seeing the engine compartment completely empty. So the engine was literally on a hoist next to the helicopter. Brand new, the engine was overhauled. It looks so clean and so nice, and it's just gonna fit right in there. Everything on the inside is gonna look brand spanking new. As I said earlier, this is the same airframe, but I mean like the frame, the metal chromoly frame is new, so is it the same airframe?
Wow, I didn't even notice. Yeah, we found out today that the new horizontal stabilizer performs better in high gusty wind situations, and in Buffalo we have a lot of gusty winds. If you watch our videos, you've seen us coming back from Canada just getting absolutely tossed around near Toronto, and then we get across that lake and that wind coming off Lake Erie is always just like a bitch. Hopefully it will be a little bit more stable for us going through. There's procedures that we had to put in place, I think, when we pick up the Falcon and we start flying again. Things that I should be doing to like make sure that we're also safe. There's a lot of things that I am like really afraid of that got cleared up for me today. Specifically mass bumping and getting caught in turbulence and high wind situations. So that was really interesting. Kind of got lost a little bit with some of the charts and the engine talk, but I have a really good grasp now on what the manifold pressure means. Today I saw a diagram, so that helped.
Yeah.
I needed the diagram. I'm not the smartest. Anyway, there's like a lot of things I was like, oh, I didn't realize that could happen. Oh, I didn't realize that could happen. Oh, I didn't realize that could happen. But then there were also like, oh, so the thing that I thought that could happen actually can't happen. So, I don't know.
It's far less likely to happen.
The thing that I find really crazy about this experience is that I was fully expecting to come into the safety course and not be able to follow along at all. I think I got 95%. It's all thanks to you because over the last 5 years, every time we do something, you teach me. Right? You say what we're doing, why we're doing, do you know what this, you'll quiz me. And sometimes I roll my eyes and go, oh my God, this is so boring. Like I just like, yeah. I didn't realize how much actually like went in and stayed.
I'm very proud that you've been able to follow along.
Thank you.
Yeah. I guess when you realize that you've spent over 300 hours, I'd say, in the passenger seat next to me, it's no surprise that you kind of absorbed a lot of it. You pretty much have gone through a lot of basic flight school. It's revisiting all of the concepts that should be, like that become a little bit, oh, let me think about that for a second. And it's, making sure that you reinforce the things like, oh, know the emergency procedures like the back of your hand, get out the POH, the pilot operating handbook again, and refamiliarize yourself with all of the various emergency procedures, because it's kind of like now, like I haven't been flying for almost a full year. I also have my first flight tomorrow in almost a full year, so that's like gonna be very interesting. Bob Muse has been teaching it, and he actually met us at the factory when we dropped off our aircraft. That he's like the lead safety instructor at Robinson. So he is Mr. Safety. And Becky loves safety. In fact, Becky, what did you say when we were coming up the elevator? You'd want to read the instruction manual for the helicopter? I think a lot of that too probably comes from your anxiety of you see a light come on and you don't know if we're about to die or if this is like no big deal. Knowing what those lights are will, I think, give you a lot of comfort.
What's the procedure?
What's the procedure? Yeah, Dwight Schrute over here. What's the procedure? Here's the crash course in lights. If it's red, land ASAP. If it's yellow, land at your earliest convenience. If it's a yellow light plus another indicator like a adverse sound, vibration, smell, something doesn't feel right, treat it like a red light, get on the ground as fast as possible. Now there's nuance to all of the different lights, but for your reasons, yeah, if you see a yellow light, it doesn't mean that you're gonna fall out of the sky.
So Chris has 500 flight hours, which like, if you go around the room, that's a low time pilot, right? No shade, but like generally speaking, like 500 hours is not a lot. But we've had a lot of really unique experience over the last 5 years that kind of put us in these situations where during the safety course where he's like, well, when this light comes on, this is a sound. Like, well, we had that light come on and like, this is what we did. You know, we're flying and we don't have a lot of fuel. And we see a spot that we can land and we put it down and we make that decision. We're going to put the helicopter down. We're going to go get fuel because that is the right thing to do because we're probably not going to make it to the airport. So it's reinforced. If this happens, do this. And okay, this happened to us and we did that. Like, that's the procedure. I remember a lot of things. Banning pass. I'm scarred for life.
Last day of the Robinson safety course is tomorrow. That's my flight day tomorrow.
Back up to 8364 Zulu JJ with X-ray for a southeast departure, please. Bring the cyclic back. That's going to solve both problems.
Yep.
Now the horn's going to come on when you roll out. Don't worry, just go into another turn quickly. Now it's going to dive halfway around, so there you go, just that little bit, not too much. A little bit more right there, a little come back, hold it back a bit more, and then roll out. And then roll around.
Back behind the controls after nearly a full year. We just jumped right in. You could tell like all like the precision flying, everything was just kind of a little bit loose, which is fine. So we did a bunch of autos and auto variations. So you roll off the throttle, the engine's no longer driving the rotor system and you enter an auto rotation, which means that the air flowing through the rotor disc is now what's spinning your blades, your main rotor blade. And that's essentially what's equivalent to gliding in a helicopter. So we practice establishing, getting into an auto rotation, kind of standard at 70 knots, and then keeping our rotor RPM at 100% and just kind of riding that in. And we did some variation, S turns, and we practiced some, max glide configurations. So that's just kind of some of the variations we worked on. And this is all kind of like the standard stuff that I did in 2018, actually, because I did the same flight with Simon in 2018. And at this point, I haven't hovered in a year. I haven't hovered a helicopter, and hovering a helicopter is much different than flying a helicopter straight and level. So he basically we just went off into the grass area. Follow me along the controls. We're gonna do a hover auto rotation. So basically just snap off the throttle and then just basically keep the thing straight and level, keep the ship upright, and then just pull pitch at the very end to cushion your landing on. So it's a practicing an engine failure in a hover. But that also requires you to be hovering there. So he gives me the controls, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh wow, I haven't hovered a helicopter in a long time. After like 10 seconds, you're like, okay, figured it back out. Okay, back to the normal hover abilities that I had. But it was very odd expecting to be able to just have a rock solid hover. But again, I haven't done this in a year. That was for the official Robinson flight. We also did some vortex ring state training, and then I did an extra hour with Simon, and we basically just reiterated all those concepts and really try to solidify them and just get more practice and more repetition. But after 2 hours, your brain starts to be a little bit saturated. Performance starts here, and you start getting better, and then you crest, and then they start getting worse. You're like, okay, that's when you kind of know it's like no longer worth your while to continue trying to train because you're not getting out of it as much as you could. I think we're going to come back, spend a few days in Torrance, do a flight or two with Bob, do a flight with Simon. A lot of people are asking why we chose to overhaul the helicopter, aka rebuild it, rather than just buying a brand new helicopter and selling the old one. And I kind of liken it to, if someone chooses to renovate their house, well, why don't you just buy a new house? And that kind of puts it into perspective that these helicopters are large investments, and it's not just as easy as selling an old one and buying a new one. You can do that, and a lot of people do choose to do that. For us, not just the familiarity of the aircraft, but it's also the cost as well, especially when you consider an overhauled used helicopter comes off the Robinson Overhaul factory assembly line. It is near indistinguishable from a brand new aircraft. So from an economical standpoint, we had a lot less capital up front. It gave us time to save up for the overhaul, so we were able to take it more and break it down more in chunks. But we had to be okay with flying a used aircraft for those 5 years. That's why we chose to do the overhaul, just because it met our budget better. Yeah, and if you guys were curious about more of the costs and things like that, or the intricacies of helicopter ownership, we'll link to a episode of the podcast in the description box below.
I'm like coming away from this with like how to better prepare for our longer trips, specifically more remote trips, and also like a bit of a better understanding of how the helicopter works, so it's helpful.
I kind of forget that you have never gone to flight school.
Yeah.
So all of the gaps in your knowledge, I just kind of fill in.
So we're gonna end it here. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week for another one.
West Virginia, go, go, go.
I guess we will have bloopers now for this video.
She's so annoyed by me.
Hold it together, Nicholas.
West Virginia, ASMR.